So, as you go through life, there are some people you need on your team, and a lawyer is certainly one. Hi, this is Alex, licensed CPA and Realtor. Today I'm joined by Michael Carbone. Mike, do us a favor and introduce yourself.
Hi, Alex. I'm Mike Carbone. I am a business and immigration attorney on Staten Island, New York. Started my practice in April 2019, and I mostly help freelancers, small businesses with business formations, contract drafting, review, and negotiations. And then on the immigration side, I do family-based green card petitions, naturalizations, and I also do humanitarian visas for crime victims.
Oh, didn't know that. Damn.
Now you do.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the two big facets. I was like, you really did a deep dive.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, well, a lot of lawyers that I know won't start their career, going out into the woods and doing it on their own. They'll join a firm and, grind their face off for sometimes a decade plus, right? You decided to do this almost off the jump, right? So, I mean, what
No.
I mean, what was your mindset and like what kind of got you to saying, hey, look, you know what, I'd rather just be my own boss?
Yeah. So I did kind of do the route of starting with another firm, although I didn't do it for a decade. I had originally got a job in central New Jersey. I worked at an immigration law firm, did that for a couple of years. And then I decided like, my degree is pretty diversified. I can do a lot of different things. And I decided to go into compliance at a big bank. Um, and I learned quickly that, like working for a huge corporation is like not fun. And like the experience of working with like human beings and helping people out and being able to interact with one another really is what kind of brought me into the idea of starting my own practice. Um, Pretty much there was like, I don't know, it was like a period of like 2 weeks or 3 weeks where I started getting a lot of calls from friends, family members, like, hey, do you do this? Can you help me out with this? I have some legal work for you. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign that I should start my own practice. Like I had experience in private practice, although obviously not on my own. But I took that as kind of like a sign, and I decided to set up an LLC for myself and get my insurance, put myself out there into the world, hang out my shingle, is what they say, and yeah, I haven't looked back since. It's been awesome. I mean, it's been like a roller coaster, of course, because we had COVID. I decided to start a business like 8 months before the 100-year pandemic hits this world, and so there's definitely been ups and downs, but yeah, I would say like I don't know, maybe it was like a good couple of phone calls from friends and family that really like inspired me to start my own practice, start my own business.
I mean, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of get stuck on that fence, right? If you have doctors, lawyers, even tax folks, they're like, "Oh, can you do X, Y, and Z?" And a lot of times, they're like, if people ask me about this, maybe I should go on my own. And most are gonna be like,
No.
eh. Or
Right.
or the other flip side is they're like, "Oh, I could certainly do this," and they go out to the real world and they're like, "Oh, wait, my three friends, my grandma, and my auntie aren't enough to keep the lights on," right? So
Right.
I mean, me, not that I've been like deep diving into your business, not fully stuck in it. I did a little poking around. Um,
Sure.
but I mean, at this point, it's been years, right?
Yeah.
And I would, judging from the amount of content that's coming out, and you seem to be gaining traction, right? And so for me, what that speaks to is that you've been consistent with your work, and this wasn't just a pipe dream that you decided, hey, this is gonna be fun because I hate working for a boss. This is like, no, this is something I'm doing. Period. Like
Right. Right.
this is gonna be my life. And so, with I just want to take that moment to just it's a weird potential thing, but like thank you for really sticking out because I do like seeing my friends post things and be like, hey, look, I made it or I'm making it, right?
Right.
Um, and so with that aside, the other curiosity is going to be Is there a particular reason why you chose the fields that you decided to like specialize in?
So, um, well, I can definitely say the immigration, yes. So when I was in law school, after the like after the first year, you start to get to really pick courses that you want to take. The first year is kind of like set in stone. You can't really change that. And so my school started offering all these different courses, and I saw immigration law, and I was like, oh, like I don't know why, but there was something in me that was like, you should try this. You should look into this. And I ended up taking the class, and I was like, wow, like good choice, right? Like the professor was awesome. She really she took the class from like the history of immigration in this country to the Immigration and Nationality Act that is like the foundational statute that controls most of immigration law in this country, and really went through the gamut of everything. And I was like, you know what, like this is fascinating. And I really I always gravitated towards like complex issues. And so anything that's like founded on statutory law, very like, minutia all over the place. Like I don't know, I just really liked that stuff. And then when I got out of law school, I was like looking for jobs, and I got an opportunity with this firm in New Jersey, and they happened to be an immigration firm. Now, they did other things too, but I was like, okay, if I really want to do this, like this is a chance. So I ended up doing it, and I handled so many different kinds of cases, and I think one of the like greatest takeaways from immigration law is like the work that I do can change someone's life. It can change someone's life for the better, I hope. And I'm able to use my experience and skill set to, help someone get legal status in the United States that maybe had no chance of getting legal status or had no hope or thought, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I might have to go back to my country, which I fled for XYZ reason. And I had a lot of clients that just like some broke down in tears because of how happy they were that I was able to be there and help them. And that's like, you can't bottle that, like, so for me, it was like, I had a lot of experience in immigration, and I'm so passionate about it that it's like when I was starting my practice, obviously I was going to do immigration law. And then the other thing that I did is, when you're starting out on your own, it's like any case you've ever touched, you're like, I do that, right? I worked on a divorce case, I'm a family lawyer. I worked on an employment discrimination case, I'm an employment lawyer. I did a collections case, I'm a collections lawyer. And I threw all these practice areas out there, and I quickly learned like it's a lot to keep up with all of that and maintain the knowledge, the institutional knowledge of like all of those practice areas. And as the months and time went on, I would slowly drop things off. And business law was on there because I had done some work at my first job at a law school with a couple of small businesses, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with, one, two, three member, companies, and kind of like getting in the nitty gritty of like their issues and contractual concerns and stuff like that. And I was like, I know this, like I know this. And it was kind of like, I felt like at some point I had like three or four practice areas competing with one another, and the business knocked the other ones out of the water, and the immigration as well. And I eventually settled on those two, and I was like, this is it. Like this is where I'm going. And look, if things change and one beats out the other, I mean, I would hope immigration beats out the business side, but at this point, like I'm pretty set on those two areas because that's where all of my experience has been, in and where I want to take my firm.
Oh, that makes sense. And it's interesting that you chose the route you did, right? You know, when she said that you were into immigration, I kind of had like a huh. It's like another lawyer with immigration because it's just come from an immigrant family, so naturally the lawyers do have a team of lawyers, for whatever purposes. But the
Right.
people that my mother would talk to and talk about growing up, he's like, oh, yeah, this person, he does X, Y, and Z. He does immigration. He does immigration. She does immigration. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of them. But then as I go into the real world, they're like, oh, no, dude, I have maritime law. I have X, Y, and Z. But my mother would still, and she never mentioned when we were young. It wasn't until like after high school, right? She mentioned, the lawyer. If I could count on my one hand the people that I would, absolutely thank with like my whole life, right? One of them was our immigration lawyer, right? When my parents
Wow.
came to this country, you know, in that respect, I feel like we've been blessed, right? Not everyone is that lucky, but my mother
Yeah.
would tell me, she's like, look, there have been times where he came to bat for us over and beyond what he needed to do, right? And he just you don't get too many lawyers who will go really consult and make sure your clients are okay, right? And so
Yeah.
it's God.
No, no, I was gonna say, like, there's a huge component of like empathy and compassion with immigration law because you're not, you're not dealing with a business. You're not dealing with a company. Like these are real people with real lives, with real stories and real families, and everything has consequences. And like if you don't have the heart to help people in these situations, like you're not going to do well in immigration. Like you need to have that connection, that compassion, like and empathy to like embrace these people and understand like when someone's coming to an immigration attorney, it could be like, hey, I just got married and I want to bring my wife here, or it could be the worst day of their life. Like, I just got picked up by immigration and I might get deported, which I don't handle those cases. I used to handle them, but whatever the situation is, it's like you're sometimes like a beacon of hope for people, and it's a lot of pressure certainly, but it's like I'm certainly passionate enough about immigration law and helping people and families that it's like a no-brainer for me. So I get it. I totally get it.
I mean, hats off to you, man. Because I mean, not that I deal with the lawyer end, but you do hear, well, in my circles, such and such, and yeah. I mean, we've heard horror stories. We have,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's unfortunate.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean
Um,
there's like schemesters, like people that are just like, "Oh yeah, if we say that you're afraid to go back to your country, I can get you a work visa." And they'll just do like thousands of those cases, and it takes years for those cases to get decided, and now at that point it's too late. You're screwed, and you got to try to pick up the pieces, and that sham lawyer has banked probably hundreds of thousands of dollars at your expense, and they don't care because nothing's going to happen to them. I mean,
mhm.
look, they'll probably lose their law license, but are they going to be like criminally prosecuted? Maybe, maybe not. They're not going to lose their citizenship. There's a lot of like twisted people out there that are driven by money, which it's fine to want to make money and grow a business and build a life for yourself, but not at the expense of causing significant harm to innocent people. Like that's terrible.
It is. And so, I fall into that, I guess, that pool of folks who, for those who actually do the good work, I do appreciate the work that you put out. I'm grateful for being born and raised in New York, but, I understand that a lot of the people that I've come to care about, not so, it's a roll of the dice, right? It just happens to be where you happen to be
Yeah.
born. And, it's good work, and I imagine that field of work does put an emotional tax on you, and now
Can.
it can be taxing, right? And then you
Yeah.
decided to go into something where most people start losing hair from stress, and you start your own practice, right? And I imagine the early onset of that, the startup hasn't been just all rainbows and butterflies, right? So could you
No.
kind of touch on to what you kind of dealt with and like how you managed to get through those tribulations?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that owning a business will always be an up and down roller coaster. Like, even when you think you're like doing fantastic, something will happen. There'll be a recession, or you'll lose your staff, or like just anything can happen with a business and you have to be prepared. But, like initially, one of the hardest things about going out on your own as a lawyer, at least, is now I'm not just the lawyer, right? Like I'm the accountant, I'm the marketer, I'm the administrative assistant. I am, dealing with all of like the like system stuff. Like it was definitely challenging to build that like foundation that made me a legitimate business. Because like, yes, registering my LLC makes me a legitimate business, but when someone calls, like you need to answer the phone and like have a whole system to be able to like provide your services to people. Like, can you imagine like you go to a store and it's just like studs on the wall and there's someone like at a desk in the back of like a gigantic warehouse and they're like, "Can I help you?" And you're like, "What is going on here? Like, what is this business?" So, kind of like building that like legitimacy is very important. And I knew like before I even like registered the LLC that I was going to have to do some of those things, and I started doing a lot of research and finding like what software do I want to use to manage my clients and my cases. And I found that. And then like, am I going to get an accountant? Am I going to use QuickBooks? Like, how what are like the procedures and like workflows that I'm going to have for my cases? Like this stuff, there's not like a book, like there are certainly books of like how to start your own law firm, but like they skip over all that stuff. And so there's a lot of like creating systems and workflows so that my life is easier when I'm dealing with prospective clients and even clients. It's like I have I have a system in place. Like when you call me, this happens. When you fill out my intake form, this happens. Like, when I'm doing follow-ups and this happens. Like there's a whole system that I've created to try to, make my life easier, make my clients' lives easier, and and sort of limit the burdens of owning a business. Like the lawyering part is probably the easiest part. It's like, "Hi, I have a legal issue. Can you help me?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm a lawyer. Let me see what you got going on." And I look it over and I do the lawyer stuff, and and people are happy. But all the other things are is being the business owner and the business side of things, and like they don't teach that in law school. So it was definitely like an uphill battle of like trying to figure these things out. And like for anyone thinking about doing this, it's like there's a bunch of books I could recommend, and also like find mentors. Like I was able to find a couple of like more seasoned attorneys that have been through this to just be like, "What do I do in this situation? What did you do?" So yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster, still a roller coaster. I mean, the good is outweighing the bad now, fortunately. But there'll always be challenges. Certainly.
It's I guess that one of the things is there are going to be folks who say that you have to have a personality for, like you're that personality type to own a business, right? And then
Yeah, for
some of it
sure.
could be true, right? And some of it could just be like, look, no, I grinded, right? And how like would you say that you were always very like systems and organization oriented and like you had processes mapped out in your head?
Yeah, in a way, I've always been very like meticulous, and I have lists, and I plan a lot of things, and like I didn't know exactly how I was going to do what I did, but I knew that I needed a plan. So like it was it was almost like there's no other way, right? Right? Like I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, how else do you do this? And it's like having interacted with other attorneys. There's these attorneys that are like, "Oh yeah, I had no idea what I was doing, and I did everything on like paper and napkins and stuff." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like that would never be me." But yeah, I just like I actually I knew I was going to start my firm before I quit my job to launch my firm. And so the last, like, I kind of said to myself, like, the last 6 months of this job is going to be like pedal to the metal. I'm going to come home from work every day and like work on what I want my firm to be so that when I launch, it's real. Like, I don't have to like go through those growing pains of like, oh, I don't have accounting software. I don't have this. So I did all that groundwork, fortunately, and I created like a procedures manual for my firm, which is probably insane. Like I don't think any lawyers are even doing this. But I was like, I want that there as like a crutch and as like a way so that like my future self could benefit from it. So I suffered a little, but I created the systems and the things that needed to be in place in order to, run the practice without really having those like anxieties or worries that like, do I come off as legit? Like, am I wasting people's time? Can they trust me? Because it's about building trust, authority. Like people want to find an attorney. If they're finding an attorney on the internet, they want to make sure that like there are some things out there that show that you're real, like when someone's like, oh yeah, I know this attorney, and you Google their name and nothing comes up, you're thinking to yourself like, okay, this is weird, right? So getting my website up and getting grabbing up all my social media accounts for my firm, it was always kind of wired in my brain to like get all that stuff situated so I don't have to do it later, essentially.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the critical things that a lot of people kind of forget, right? Just any kind of forethought and planning, right? Kind of taking into account is more than just a business idea, right? It's how are you going to
Right.
execute in the actual implementation of your business? How are you going to upkeep your business? And and I think that's in my experience, it's been obviously you do your own research, do your own due diligence, ask around, but also having a good lawyer who's been through the ringer for their clients as well as for themselves. It helps you like, hey, look, just not it's your business, do what you want, but in my experience, I've seen X, Y, and Z. Just be careful,
Right.
right? And
Definitely.
so, with that said, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so uh, I'm going to want to have you on at another point, more most certainly.
Happy to join.
So, but I guess we'll just go into the meat of things. In terms of the business side, right? I do want to pick your brain at some point for the immigration stuff because I do think it's important, and I like to nerd out on random facts and info.
Sure. Yeah.
But so for like in terms of business owner like formations and partnerships and things of that nature, can you kind of walk me through a couple of maybe common things that you're seeing, whether it's like it be pitfalls, like maybe mistakes that they're making, or things that folks commonly don't think about when they form a business?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a lot of kind of factors at play here, right? So the first thing is like I'm forming a business, right? What's the structure of this business, right? Am I a sole proprietor, which I strongly encourage to never do. Sole proprietorships expose you to 100% unlimited personal liability, meaning your assets are up for play. If you're ever sued, they can come after your house, your bank accounts, your livelihood, everything. But that's kind of it's kind of like fading out. But anyway, so there's sole proprietorship, there's partnerships, there's limited liability companies, corporations. Trying to first establish which one of those structures makes sense for you is like the biggest first step, right? Because you know I think there's a huge trend in, and it has been for the last, who knows, 15, 20 years, but I think that more people are leaning towards LLCs, and it's because they are significantly easier to operate and upkeep. Corporations are quite antiquated, and unless you're looking to have international investors and become like a big conglomerate company, it's like LLCs, although cost more to start up, are significantly cheaper to run. There's little to no corporate formalities. I mean, it's like an LLC is a blank slate. You could do whatever you want in terms of how you want to run the company. Do you want to have a board? You can. Do you not want to have a board? You could do that too. Like, do you want to have a C-suite of executives, CEOs, CFOs? You could do that. You don't have to do that. Whereas corporations are like very structured. You need a board, you need C-suite executives, you have to have monthly meetings. You have to follow a lot of corporate formalities. And so, I think people that want to start businesses, they'll do a little bit of research on the internet, they'll get an idea. I would say majority of the times when I get calls, like they're like, I want to start an LLC or I want to start a corporation. Like a lot of people now more than ever have the freedom to find out the information they're looking for on the internet where they can come kind of prepared. Because I think there's always been this like stigma with lawyers. It's like we lawyers have spent so many years distancing themselves from people and kind of putting up this wall of like, I'm better than you, I'm more important than you, and people are afraid to talk to lawyers. And so now it's like, oh, you mean I can research this on the internet and like actually come prepared to speak with a lawyer? So people are more equipped. Not they don't know everything, but I would say, when it comes to starting a business, it's like choosing the entity is number one, and then there's other factors, right? Like how many are there any partners? Is it just you? Are you the only one starting the business? If there's partners, there's other things to consider, especially how the company is managed. So in New York State, all LLCs are required to have what's called an operating agreement. And if you're a single member LLC, meaning you're the only owner, it's kind of like the not so important. You need to have it, but you are the owner. You are the most important person. You're not talking to anyone. You don't have to, go to anyone to make decisions for the company. You make all the decisions. Whereas when you have multiple partners, that's when like negotiating the operating agreement becomes a big deal because now you have the interests of two plus people coming into play here. And it's like, who's going to manage this side of the business? Who's going to be responsible for handling the taxes, dealing with the accountant? Like there's a lot of things at play that people don't necessarily consider when they're starting a business. It's always easier if you're just a single member LLC. It's when you bring in other people that things get complicated. And I would say the other pitfall too is like, it's really easy to start a business. It's not so easy to end and break up a business. And a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'm starting a business with three of my buddies and we're the bestest of friends. And that's fine. But that might not be true forever, right? Like things happen, the littlest things could aggravate someone, money disputes become a thing. And if you don't have a solid operating agreement to deal with those scenarios, you've essentially just signed your death warrant to be in endless litigation to negotiate things that could have been easily resolved in a well drafted operating agreement. Um, I
I mean,
think
for me,
I hope that answers your question.
it does. I mean, it's when people ask me, like, oh, we just had a rough job and we rough drafted it. You say, oh, everything's 50-50, da, da, da. I'm like, all right, cool. What else is in there? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, job
That's it.
duties? Like who's responsible for what? Like, what did you allocate? Like, why? We just handle everything. I'm like, listen, in my opinion, right? From a marriage, for instance, is a partnership agreement, right? And the unfortunate thing is, in the case where people get divorced, where is your agreement? And you've seen, I think we've all at this point seen or heard of divorces that have gone disgustingly wrong.
That's like most of them.
Right. So,
Right.
and for me, I'm like, the difference here is that, this is, it's similar in that, like, you're kind of married to this person, your business partner, right?
That's exactly correct. Yeah. It's
Right.
it's like functionally the same thing as a marriage, literally.
Correct. And the difference is, there might not be, child support and stuff on the breakup, but you do want to just make it so that you guys just make it clear. Look, this is my job, this is your job, right? And like you said, if there's no exit clause, or it's not carefully spelled out, did you think of contingencies? Like for instance, in my realm, right? It's let's say me and a partner go and buy rental real estate together, right? And
Hmm.
maybe it will just, for me, when I tell my folks, it's like, look, if you never work with this person, force it to be a short term thing, right?
Right.
For instance, right? If you're not 1,000% sure, be like, look, this partnership ends in 2 years, right?
Yep. Yeah, which you
Gain
can
or
do.
loss, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever it makes sense, right? It's a business, right? Make as long as they agree and it's something that makes sense for the parties involved, do that. But don't
Right.
just say we'll sell 50-50. But what if I don't want to sell? What if I don't want to sell?
Right. What I'd say to that is like a lot of the times it's convenience and money, right?
Hmm.
Because having a well-drafted operating agreement is going to cost you money, right? Like you have to pay a lawyer to draft that. And a lot of people are in a position where if they're just starting a business, we don't have money. We don't have money to pay a lawyer. We don't have money to pay ourselves. We don't have money to pay a lawyer. And you can't convince someone hard enough, if that's the way to put it, like you need this, like you really need this because here's a big one, which I hate to be morbid, but people die. Everyone dies, right? So if you are in a business partnership with someone, what happens when they die? What happens when your partner dies? Does their share go to their estate? Does it go to a spouse? Like now, are you now stuck in a business partnership with your former partner's wife? Like, what what are you gonna do to prepare for that situation? And that's again where the operating agreement comes in. What some companies do is they will buy insurance policies on the partners so that when that person dies, it's not an issue. The corporation or the LLC buys the share out, the estate of that partner gets the insurance proceeds, and that's it. And that's what happens, and that situation is handled. Whereas if you don't plan for that, you're now stuck with probably surrogates court to deal with the estate side of things and the commercial division of the Supreme Court to deal with the business side of things. Who wants to be in that scenario when you could have contracted out of that? It's like it's that easy.
But Mike, look. I get what you're saying, but I just saw on Google that I could legal Zoom this. Why am I gonna spend the extra money and deal with you, right? When I could Google search my information and then I'll have it set up on legal Zoom for a fraction of that price, right? And
Right.
this is I'm sure you hear this often,
I do. Yeah,
right?
no, I mean, like, you know, LegalZoom, in my opinion, can be a good resource depending on what you're using it for. So, like, there are certain things that it's like a one-page agreement that you need for something that like a lawyer might charge like $1,000 for or $600 for, and LegalZoom will do it for like $200. Now, like everything else, it's like you are putting your chance in the hands of a company that's huge, and they're not like, I mean, I don't know the internal structure of LegalZoom, but like you're not getting that like one-on-one support that you would get with an attorney. And there's just certain things that they don't like. Let's use two examples, right? So if you go on LegalZoom to form a company, they'll do that for you, right? And they'll do it really cheap. But there's two things that I know they don't do. Number one, in New York State, when you file an LLC, there's a publication requirement, which we're the only state that does it, which is fantastic, right? But you have to do it to legitimize your LLC, and you're essentially publishing an announcement of your LLC in two local newspapers for 6 weeks. And LegalZoom's not going to do that for you. They're just going to set up the company. They're going to file with the Department of State, and then they're going to be like, "Here you go. Here's your LLC. It's formed." And then most people don't know about the publication requirement, and down the road they find out that, oh, they were supposed to do that when they formed their company. So it's like you're getting kind of like half-assed work. And then the other point I was going to make is like I don't know if LegalZoom does like a lot of contracts, like drafting contracts, but you're gonna pay, and they're just gonna give you a template. They'll ask you a bunch of questions, and it's gonna spit out a template that some algorithm produced. Now, for the most part, what I do in my practice is like I will start with like a baseline agreement, which is probably the thing that they're spitting out at you. But then I am interacting with the client, learning everything about their business, and then incorporating all of the unique aspects of their business into that contract so that it is tailored to them, to their business. And I think that LegalZoom just misses the point on that. They'll give you a contract, but like that contract is being spit out to every company that's seeking that type of contract, and it's not unique, and it's not going to cover that very specific scenario that only applies to caterers or wedding planners or anything, honestly, like you're going to get this generalized boilerplate contract that is just not tailored in the way that makes sense for you and your business. So that's where I would say like the lawyer comes in. Like we've been doing this stuff for years, and big tech is going to try to make everything easier for us. Uber and what is it, Grubhub and all these different companies, which it solves a lot of problems, but like I feel like the law is just not there yet with that aspect of things. So, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to tell you like we're better because we are like we still are better than LegalZoom. That's what I got.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like it goes with a lot of services too. I mean, there's it boggles my mind when you have folks who own successful businesses or they make an astronomical amount of money, especially in those cases, and they're saying, "Hey, look, I just go to some big brick tax place." I'm like, "So what
Right.
about the tax planning? Where's the tax strategy, right?" And I could speak from the CPA side, right? And my thing is, listen, look, if you have, say, a small, old, used 30-year-old bike, you might lock it up with a nonsense like $5 lock, right?
Right.
But if you're locking up your Bugatti, are you going to use the same $5 lock? Because if you are, you're insane,
Absolutely not. Right.
right? And so for me, it's where, like, at what tier do you see this business in terms of your legacy, right? In terms of what you think you will own. If you're okay with gambling on that $5 lock, go ahead and do it, right? It's a one size fits all type situation. But if you want to make sure that all angles are covered, or as many as you could possibly do within reason, I mean, I get it. It's not cheap. It's not, right? And I'm still kind of putzing around to justify the cost on my end. But
Right.
as I get towards and I advise clients, as look, what do you want to do, right? Do you want to gamble? And look, I'm okay with you making your decisions. You're a grown person, but understand the risk and don't just listen to your bar buddy saying, "Hey, you don't need that because X, Y, and Z." I'm like, really understand what you're doing,
Right.
please, because
Right.
you know,
Right, right. And it's like you've come to me as a professional, you're seeking my advice as a professional, and I'm giving it to you, and you don't love it. Like you don't, because it's reality. It's the
Mhm.
truth. And some people don't like to confront the truth, and they can't handle the truth. And it's to your point, it's like, look, yes, it costs a little bit of money. Pay that now to save yourself thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars if you're in a situation where, for you, it's like now you're getting audited or you owe a lot of back taxes because you didn't structure your business or your strategy properly. And, for me, it's like you're in litigation and
Mhm.
you are just throwing money at a lawyer and your case just goes on forever.
Yep.
Who wants that? Like, who wants to sign up for that?
And that was the other point. They often say that preventative is much cheaper, well, from expense side than the fix, right? And so it's like, look, when do you want
Yes.
it potentially? And look, some people never seen a doctor and they're perfectly fine. But in the case of an oh crap, right? Would you rather have taken those vitamins, or would you rather spend your fortune trying to fix whatever broke, right? You
Yeah.
pick one, right? And and I know we're short on time, but I wish we had more time for this. And you know what? If it's okay with you, I want to definitely schedule another thing.
Yeah. I'm happy to come
Um,
back.
but as from a separate tax perspective, obviously LLCs don't save on taxes, right? But what we're seeing more often is that as you start with an LLC, right, get at least base level in, or an LLP. And for us, is if you have an LLP, it's a separate, you have financial statements, right? And so from an audit perspective, it's significantly less. Now, if your LLC goes up to an S corp, right, where
Mm,
that's where we start playing in terms of tax work, right? And this is
right.
where people kind of lose their heads because they're like, well, I don't want to spend the extra money to set up my S corp, and if I'm not going there, why would I start with an LLC? I'm like, because this is your baby, right? Just like you wouldn't leave your child out in the streets, don't leave your business out in the open like that, right? If you're day one, maybe, right? But if you start to see that your business is progressing and you say that you absolutely do not have the money, I would say that's an insurance policy that you should absolutely have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, completely. It's like if one thing you have to accept when you start a business, no matter what that business is like you're going to be dealing with lawyers and you're going to be dealing with accountants. If you want to do things right and you want to have like a sustainable business that's going to last in the long term, like it's just impossible to not take those into consideration. You can do it, and look, some people are probably savvy and they can do it without those people. But like, what percent of the population is that? Like, I would say a majority of people don't know anything about taxes. I don't know anything about taxes. And that's why I go to accountants and I go to tax professionals for that stuff. Like, and people come to me because they're like, I could probably do this on LegalZoom or find a template on the internet, but I don't think that that's going to cover what I need. So I'm coming to you. And then here I am. I'm here to help, and you're there to help your clients. And we're fortunate when people do come to us and consult with us because they're thinking straightforward and they're thinking the right way to like situate themselves in their businesses to sustain in the long term for the length of their lives.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm definitely gonna have to pick your brain again, but because I just realized that I do need to go to a doctor's office for my wife. Um,
Okay.
could you do me a favor? Tell everyone where they can find you.
Sure. So you can catch me at my website, carboneattorneys.com. We have, there's a button on my website that allows you to schedule consultations with me. I also have all my social media links on my website as well. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I have a YouTube account. Just look up Carbone Law. I should come up.
All right, perfect. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to have you on again. But
Yeah,
with that
no, it's
said,
been a pleasure.
thank you all for joining us, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.